Welcome to the All Access Entertainment Podcast. I am your host, Joseph Bruen. We have a special guest this week right here, a man that you may not have seen for a while here in the New England scene, Hugo Adames, of course, Kevin Karizma in the house. Thanks for joining us, Hugo.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to see you and pleasure to take this time to spend with you today. It's very exciting, and hopefully it will lead to some more fruitful things for both of us.
Yes, without a doubt. And yeah, I mean, it's great to we're going to take a deep dive into your career, rewind a little bit. You've had a few names over the years as far as different gimmicks go and that sort of thing. So let's rewind back to the very beginning. Growing up as a child, being a wrestling fan, when did you first discover pro wrestling?
Oh boy. I was a child. I was very, very young. Honestly, I'm from another country. I am actually I'm Dominican, and I came to this country when I was between 7 and 9. Permanently stayed when I was 9, and I remember back in Dominican Republic hearing of a time where Ric Flair came down to wrestle a gentleman that was a prominent wrestler in Dominican Republic named Jack Venom, or in Spanish, it was Jack Veneno. And I remember that like it was yesterday. My dad was into wrestling at that time. And then when we moved to the States, he actually became a radio personality and ran a radio station that in the early 80s, late, between the early 80s, late 90s, he would actually do promotions for WWE and raffle off tickets. And after he raffled off the radio station tickets, they would provide him with family tickets. So we would get to go to the Providence Civic Center at the time and watch almost every single wrestling show from the old WWF. So I remember wrestling since I was maybe 8, 9 years old.
Wow. And who were some of your favorite superstars growing up as a kid?
Oh, I mean, at that time, obviously, like George the Animal Steel. I grew up with that kind of era. The transition from kind of, I remember late Don Morocco. I remember late, well, not even late, I should say. I remember a lot of Kurt Hennig. I remember obviously Hogan, Brutus Beefcake, those type of guys. Macho Man was a huge influence. And then as it got further and further into time, Shawn Michaels, as you know from my early career, a lot of my mannerisms and wrestling style and even costume was a lot based on Shawn Michaels when I was back as Antonio Adams in the in NEWA days.
And let's talk about the NEWA. How did you get your foot in the door as far as transitioning from fan to, a member of the business? How did that start for you?
So ironically, I got to the business through my brother-in-law, Jose Perez, or Jose Garcia. He knew a gentleman named Carlos that wrestled for PLW. And Carlos got Jose into wrestling at PLW, and I would go to a couple of the practices. Now, I've always been athletic. I played baseball, football, basketball, you name it. I've kind of played it. So the physical aspect of wrestling kind of caught my eye when I would go with Jose to his practices. And mind you, I was probably like around 15, 16 at that time. And after Jose's practices, I was able to get in the ring with him and play around with him. And a couple of the guys would jump in and kind of see what I could do. One day I was asked to come out to the ring with him as his manager. And that's where the Mortician was born, because he was going as El Diablo at the time. And I started out as his manager. He got himself a partner, Steve's name, the coroner. And I managed both of them for about a year. I think on my 17th birthday, I was actually in the ring, just going through some stuff, and I knew how to do a lot of backflips when because I was a Boy Scout early in my years, and I learned that from a kid that I used to be very close with in the Boy Scouts, and I was able to do backflips, and it kind of took a liking to that. All of a sudden, I'm in the ring. And it kind
Wow.
of took off from there. That's why it's hard for me to remember a lot of what my wrestling career has been in that aspect, because it was just me having fun.
Yeah. And were there a lot of other people along the way that were responsible for adding to your training as far as kind of getting you out
Oh
there?
God, yeah. I mean, it's funny because before you and I started getting on here, I started writing down a couple of this stuff. So I do have, a couple of trainers that I've had the fortune to be in the ring with. Whether they would say that they trained me, it's one thing. There are some official ones, but they did make an influence on me. So like I was able to at first when I was in PLW. My dad actually knew a wrestler that went by Bronco too. And he was actually gracious enough to come and train us for a couple of weeks back in PLW. And it was myself, Jose, and I don't know if you remember Scott Z. I'm pretty sure you do
Oh
back in
yeah.
the day. He came down and trained us for once, for a couple of weeks. Scott Z has a great story about him and the drop kicks. So if you ever speak to Scott Z, ask him about that. um, I was fortunate to move to NEWA after my first year and a half of being in PLW. And at NEWA, I was actually fortunate to be trained first by Jose Perez. Anthony Rufo, the late, great Anthony Rufo, was a great mentor to me. Silvano Souza, at one point, was very heavily involved with NEWA. And at that time, he was actually training a gentleman by Steve Bradley. Who helped me out tremendously. The things that I've learned from Steve Bradley were just instrumental on what Kevin Charisma was going to become, or where I would end up as Kevin Charisma. That I think a lot of that to Jose Perez and Steve Bradley. They were both very instrumental on me becoming who I was in wrestling, even though it was just for fun.
Yeah. Any personal memories of Steve Bradley over the years?
Oh yeah. So there, if you speak with a lot of the guys that I have been privileged to be in the ring with, TJ Richter, Berta Breaker, Jose. One of my things is that I would always say to them, faster, faster, because my pace was a little faster than theirs. And my comfort zone was always a fast paced comfort zone. And when I first started in the business, everybody said to me, slow down, slow down, slow down. And Steve Bradley was the first one to say to me, do you? Do it right, do it well, and do you. And as you get comfortable, you will find your groove. So just go out there, have that passion, and drive it, and just keep pushing. And that made me look at wrestling a little bit differently. And that's definitely one of the things that I carried through my 20 something year career in wrestling. That to me, that was a defining moment where somebody just pulled me aside, not even in a setting where we were in the ring. We were actually outside in the parking lot. It was after practice. We were walking out. Silvana Souza was probably about 5 to 10 steps behind us, talking to Sean Markey. And
Yep.
we were at this old warehouse up in the hill in Johnston, I believe it was, after we had left the one in behind McDonald's. And I remember it like if it was yesterday. I'm walking to my car and I'm just talking, casually with Steve Bradley. And it was after we got out of the ring, and he said to me those words, and they stuck with me ever since.
Now, how about Anthony Rufo? You know, a man who was a huge part of the New England scene. Obviously, you knew him early on. The NEWA specifically, he was Dambula in his early days there. He went on to become Marvin the Maniac, of course, and then by UCW time, he was Mr. Troubleman, and then of course Chaotic Wrestling, one half of the Millennium Killers, whether he be Ali Muhammad or a couple different variations of that character. But what was Anthony Rufo like with you behind the scenes over the years, and what stories do you have that you can tell
Oh,
us?
Anthony was such a great guy. It was very hard when he passed. I'll be very honest with you because I associate NEWA with Rufo. It's Anthony Rufo, Studley Steve Stallion, Dragonfly, and Rocco D'Alessandro. And honestly, Anthony couldn't have been any kinder to me. For a kid who just was having fun, and at that time, most of the guys took it seriously. They had aspirations to get somewhere, and I felt that I was taking up their time. And Anthony did not feel that way. Every time Anthony saw me, whether it was at practice, whether it was in the locker room, or even at the garage. To be honest with you, for the longest time, I would actually bring my car to him. He was a mechanic by trade, and Jose is as well. And I remember hanging out at Anthony's garage for hours on end, just jaw jacking, spending time with him, and not even about the business, just knowing him and his passion for life and family. So, I mean, he made an influence on me by taking me under his wing in NEWA. And I mean, a lot of those guys did because I was always a small guy. And I never had that mindset of I'm gonna make it somewhere because it wasn't the mindset back in the day for a small guy. So it was very embracing to walk into a locker room full of much bigger guys that had much more prominent egos than I would ever have, and be welcomed. And every time I stepped foot in the ring, I never, ever, ever felt that I didn't belong. And I remember one time with Anthony Rufo, very specifically, we were in the practice ring at NEWA behind the McDonald's, low ceiling. So there was not much high flying things that you can do. But I tried. God knows I tried. And one day, Anthony grabbed me and he's like, let's start playing around. And he suplexed me, and my heels hit the lights, and the fluorescent bulbs broke. And I panicked. My eyes opened up. I was very concerned because I was the rookie. I was the out guy. So I think Anthony saw that in my face and he was like, don't even worry about it. Grabbed the broom and started sweeping it himself. Um, and it was like no big deal. We got another set of fluorescent lights and kept going.
And how do you think that Anthony should be remembered here in the New England scene and in pro wrestling as a whole?
Oh God, it's the kindest, most giving, most thoughtful, open-minded person you can ever meet. Like everything was about other people, never about him. He had a great mind for the business. He had great ideas. He can see spots out of nowhere. He was a guy that can see you practice and be like, "Hey, this would look good here," or "Can you do this here?" or "Slow this down at this moment," and "Hey, pause there." Just from staring at you and watching you move. So if he's going to be remembered, remember him for everything positive that this business has in the New England area. Anthony Rufo had some way of touching it and making a mark. Whether it was psychology, putting together a match, reacting to the crowd, knowing how to tell a story, how to react to not just the crowd, but to the boys, to the storyline. Anthony would give you every single part of that if you asked him. And he was never stingy about it. So I think Anthony should be remembered as one of the pillars of New England wrestling.
And as far as characters go for Anthony, what was your favorite iteration of Anthony Rufo? Was it Marvin the Maniac? Was it Dan Bula? What do you think how did he shine the
To me, it was
best?
definitely Dambula.
Yeah.
Dan Bulla was definitely because that's who he was when I came in. When I came into NEWA, that's who he was, and I knew him as Dan Bulla from PLW, not as Anthony from PLW. So I never knew who he was personally, and to walk into an NEWA locker room, which back then PLW and NEWA is like oil and water, so I was a PLW guy, and see Anthony Rufo, who was one of the key trainers there, look at me, and that was one of the first people that I met. He was intimidating as Dambula, um, but once you got to know him without the makeup, he was just the biggest teddy bear. I mean, like just saying his name puts a smile on my face. To be honest with you, so I couldn't say anything that Anthony did in any way, shape, or form that it was malicious. If he did, it was out of kindness of his heart, and it was just interpreted the wrong way because he just didn't have that in
Yeah.
him.
Right. Two of the ring announcers for the NEWA and RIWA. Sometimes we'd see Bob the Padre Cleese, and sometimes we would see Rock Joseph. Any memories of either
Oh
of them?
yeah, yeah. Even the trio when you add in Rex Havoc. um,
Right, right.
Bob Cleese, I remember very early, his professional voice was always a trigger. I remember back in the day, Rocco D'Alessandro was very heavily into the pen to give you your signs, as far as your 2 minute warning. And I remember looking over at the table and seeing Bob Cleese, and I remember getting my cues from Bob Cleese. And it's funny because when you step out of the ring and go around the commentary table, his voice was the standout voice. Like it rings to this day as the NEWA voice. So honestly, it was very, very early in my career to hear a professional voice that wasn't a JR voice, or even a Vince McMahon voice, a Jesse Ventura voice.
Yeah, right. And did you prefer working for NEWA over RIWA or vice versa, or was it pretty much a little bit of the same, basically being a sister promotion?
Honestly, I didn't mind working for anyone. My whole thing was just having fun, and being in the ring was the fun. So I never got into the politics. Like I never cared about, hey, you can't work for this promotion because you work for me. And honestly, that's where the moniker that we adopted, the Independents, came from. That group, the Independents, came out of the fact that we didn't care about the politics. We just wanted to work. We
Yeah,
wanted to be in every ring, put on a show, and see what we can do just to have fun. It was all about the fun, and it wasn't about the contract. It wasn't about um, going out there and putting that stamp saying, we're everywhere. It was just us trying to get ring time.
sure. And there were a lot of different venues back then. NEWA would constantly go to different high schools and some pretty big events here in the Rhode Island area. The Federal Hill festivals, in Providence. Is there a favorite venue or a favorite location that NEWA went to that stands out in your
So to
mind?
me, yes, the Federal Hill shows for NEWA. That's where I made my first appearance for NEWA, was a Federal Hill show, and that was a big milestone for me because for me going from PLW to NEWA, oh God, back then it was like WCW to WWF.
Yeah.
So I remember going and speaking with Rocco D'Alessandro Jr. And then he got me to talk to Rocco D'Alessandro, and the idea was, hey, you're going to come work for us. We're going to revamp you. We're not going to bring you in under whatever gimmick you were playing in NEWA. I mean in PLW. But we want to do something. And in the middle of that conversation, here comes Gino Giovanni. Well, at the time, I guess we looked very much alike. um,
Yeah.
So right there and then, um, I was asked, "Hey, would you mind doing the Killer Bees thing with Gino?" And I'm like, No, no, I don't. I don't see the resemblance. But if you do, and we can get away with it, let's do it. I'm okay with that. Um, and don't get me wrong, like I was playing plenty of gimmicks in or characters at PLW, so I didn't have anything etched in stone as to what I would or who I would be going into NEWA. They just liked my work and I guess my work ethic. Um, so I came in, became fabulous Antonio Giovanni. So figure that acronym out.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I see, I didn't even know that, and I know a lot about you. I've
Yeah,
never heard
yeah.
that one.
That was my first character for NEWA as Gino's twin brother. And he
Uh,
wrestled, I want to say, and I could be wrong, it was Bad Boy Billy Black that he wrestled at the Federal Hill show. Oh, God, I want to say that was in 94, maybe 95. And I was under that ring the whole time Gino did his entrance, did the first quarter of that match, took his bump out of the ring. The cue was I heard Billy go up to the top rope, yell his catch line, Gino roll under the ring, and my job was to find the opposite side of the ring. Gino rolled in, and I rolled out. So I get in the ring, and me and Bad Boy start working. Um, I probably spent about 45 seconds to a minute in that ring, bumped out, rolled under the ring, and here comes Gino. And ultimately, Gino won the match. I came out from under the ring. He introduced me, and we tagged up for probably about 2 or 3 shows. And then I became Antonio Adams.
so Double A Antonio Adams, how did that come about? How did that character change a little bit?
So at that point, it was because the end of the tie or the storyline between me and Gino had come to an end. It was only supposed to be for about a show or two. It wasn't supposed to be long term in any way. And I'll be honest with you, Antonio is my middle name, and then we just dropped the E from my last name because no one could say my last name properly, so it was always Adams. So I just kept the Adams by dropping the E, and dropped my first name being Hugo, and stuck with Antonio Adams, and that's how the name came about. As far as the gimmick itself, I'm pretty sure you could agree it's Shawn Michaels. I mean, the debut of Antonio Adams was 100% Shawn Michaels, driven from the best with the mirrors to the weightlifting Velcro pants, the white boots, and the glasses,
Yeah.
the perfectly round pink glasses. That was Antonio Adams, a knockoff of Shawn Michaels. Um, so it was funny because I went by Double A Antonio Adams, and on the first show, very first show, everybody that was in the back was like, "Oh, Art Anderson is working with us tonight. Where's Art Anderson?" And I'm like, "Wow, you guys are asses for making me feel this way."
Oh man. So when it comes to that, you've had a couple other iterations over the years. Altitude, of course, and Kevin Charisma. Ultimately, how did the Altitude gimmick start, and where did you come up with that name?
So that was working for Anthony Rufo. I remember we were walking at work. I believe it was either Central 4 or Pawtucket line at the Barton Street.
Barton Street
Yes.
Community Center.
And everywhere that I worked, I had never been asked to work the current gimmick. I was working elsewhere. 90% of the time, most wanted me to go under a mask. Um, Others, as far as my experience with promoters go, is I work for them. So as much as I have a gimmick that I feel comfortable with, ultimately they tell me what to do. So if I get told to do a match a particular way, that's what I go for. That's what I'm going to answer to. There was one instance in my whole entire career that unfortunately that went array on me, and I had this was working for Kyle White and I'm sorry, Matt and Kyle, and different story, but anyways, so that's how I approached all my matches. The promoter tells me what story I want to tell, or they want me to tell, and I would go out there and do my best to tell that story, whether it was within my character or whatever they wanted from me. So at times I would go under a mask. That's how I started in NEWA. I'm sorry, in Yankee under a mask, because I was asked to, and I think I did my job, and that's what I did going into each promotion. So when it came to switching from character to character, it was what I thought the promoter would want to see in a character, and then I would pitch it to him, because Altitude, to be honest with you, came in because of the fact that I was asked by Anthony to do something. Do a little something edgy and different, and the grunge scene was what was edgy at the time. So Altitude came out of the grunge scene, and kind of had, I hate to compare it to this, but kind of like an early Darby Allen vibe. um,
Yeah.
that was that character, and it was because it didn't have an attitude. It was never going to have a mic. He just wanted to have people see something different. So he wanted me to focus on my high flying stuff, but have no dialogue and barely any interaction with the crowd, just having them react to what I'm presenting without asking them to. So that's where altitude came from, and that's why I don't think there's been ever a promo or an interview with him.
Right. That makes sense. So obviously, when it comes to like basically the crowd interactions over the years, whether you were baby or heel or whatever it may be, do you have a certain fan interaction that stands out from any time in your career that you just won't forget?
So I don't know if it's a specific interaction, but what I do remember is the fact that with Kevin Charisma, I personally think I hit the nail on the head because of the name and the lack of charisma. It was a purposeful antidote to that character. Like if you know me personally, you would know that I'm a people person. I love joking around. I love just being in the middle of fun. Anything that happens, I'm right there. I'll be the first one to get in trouble with you. uh,
Yeah.
so that being the case, the fact that I can make that hatred with that character and have that name, it was so benefiting for me. It made me feel good to be a heel with a name that warrants something that you can't deliver, and it's by intent. And having that reaction come
Right.
back to you positively or what you're looking for, it's great. When the chant started of no charisma at Primo shows, that was amazing to me. I did my job.
Yeah. Now, talking about Rocco D'Alessandro, you touched on him briefly. Obviously, he was the owner of the NEWA, but a lot of people maybe aren't familiar with Rocco. It's not like he's in the public eye. He's never really been in the public eye. You don't see Rocco interviews or anything like that. So, you know, how was Rocco behind the scenes with you? How was he to work for? And was he just a figurehead for the company and there were other people doing the booking and doing other aspects of it? Or was it all Rocco? Let's just kind of hear some of the behind the scenes of
So
NEWA.
early in my NEWA career, I would say that Rocco was the end all be all. He had his hands on everything, start to finish. As my tenure in NEWA further, I can say that I probably was looking at it wrong. I think he probably had more people involved than what was let to be known. Obviously, training wise, it was left to certain people, some of the boys. The Office, different story. You know, Rocco D'Alessandro definitely had his control on the Office side, but he had his son Rocco Jr. You know, Rock Joe doing quite a bit of it as well, and then helping out in promos. You know, you had not just the boys like Anthony Ruffo, but Rex Havoc, a great voice, great guy, love him to death. He is one of those that would help you with your promos, with your dialogue, with your presentation. So to say that there was anybody that was specific to a job, I don't think Rocco ever appointed that. I think the boys just kind of took care of that. If you were strong at something, you taught that something. You didn't let somebody falter because you had the answer, you know, and if you were good at this and helped somebody out with it, you would hope that they would help you out with what your deficiency is. And I think that's what the locker room mentality was in NEWA. I learned a lot from them. And for a lot of people that I had heard from the PLW days that were, you know, ego driven and way up here, it was not. It was not at all going into that office. To be specific with you and a quick story about Rocco D'Alessandro. The Antonio Adams gear and gimmick, and I don't know if many people know this, that all was covered by Rocco D'Alessandro. I walked into the office one day and it was in Cranston, over by Elmwood Ave, off of Union Ave, actually. Um, and I walked into the office like a normal day at the office, and a couple of the guys were there watching videos. And this was early in my NEWA career. And I sat down with Rocco to, you know, discuss the end of the Gino storyline, and where we wanted to go with the next character. And I mean, I'm like 19 at this point. You know, I'm a young kid working part time. I don't have money for gear or anything like this. And I took it upon myself to take my sister out shopping, so that way I can get boots because I ran into white women's boots that were knee high, and I bought them. And well, I had my sister buy them, and then I brought them to a cobbler to have the soles removed and put wrestling soles on them. And that's my first pair of boots. And I walked into the office with them, and Rocco said to me, "The rest of the gear is on me." And I got the rest of the gear
Wow.
put together. And I gave him the receipts, and he gave me the money. He covered that initial cost of my gear and ultimately did end up paying for the boots and the cobbler. So he took care of that out of the willingness of having somebody that he wanted to work for him feel comfortable. And he didn't have to do that in any way.
Wow. So I'm actually pretty excited. I'm going to be sitting down with Rocco D'Alessandro for this podcast for his very first interview. You know, he's never done anything like this. He's going to be 87 years old, and he's, you know, Rock Joseph said he's very excited about it, and we're going to be doing that over the course of the next week or so. So stay tuned for that. Rocco D'Alessandro will talk all about his career and the NEWA run. So it's going to be something to look forward to for sure.
Absolutely.
And we also just had another episode with Rex Havoc about a week ago, and we did a little something special for the fans, and he unmasked for
Oh,
the
that's going
first
to be
time ever.
awesome to see.
Yeah, so he starts off the interview in, you know, full attire, and just a few minutes in, we decide, you know what, let's give the fans a little, you know, a little sneak peek, and took it right off and did the whole interview without the mask. So fans that remember those times and remember the NEWA will finally get an opportunity to see Rex, the man
Oh,
behind the mask. So another cool thing to look
absolutely.
for.
Can't wait to see that. Especially after so many
Yeah.
years. I have the privilege, you know, of being close with him. Well, not close with him, but I have dealt with him outside of wrestling quite a few times. To this day, we still keep in touch. So that'll be a great interview, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. As a fan, as a kid, for me, I remember being at these NEWA shows. NEWA was the first independent organization that I ever went to. I didn't know anything about independence. We saw an ad in the newspaper. It was 1993. My mom got me tickets, myself, my buddy Clement, and she took us to the show. And I want to say it was North Providence High School, and it was 93. And it was Greg the Hammer, Tito Santana, and Virgil on the show. And, Studley Steve Stallion and Dan Bula. And I'm seeing all these guys for the first time, the Headhunters, and just fond memories of that show. And that's when I started following them. So I would be at all of uh, the shows in Providence outside and all the festivals, and I was always there as a fan in the front row. I would get there early just to, I was so excited about it. I would just get there early and wait for an hour or two as they're setting up the ring or whatever they're doing. So NEWA for me was where it all started as a fan, for independence. So definitely some good memories
That's
there.
great to hear. To be honest with you, like you know, NEWA was a one of its kind, especially in that time period. Like just like you, those same names was what I knew. Coming from PLW, those were the names that I had feared. Coming over from PLW into NEWA, and knowing of them and their caliber was so intimidating. So, and here I am, this kid, out of Providence, Rhode Island, that you know it doesn't know a lick of anything in this world, and walking into this gym that looks like these guys know what they want and are just going for it, and I'm wasting their time, and to see them just take everyone in and help them out was great to see. It showed to the fact that the characters they play are very well played versus who the person is.
Yeah, right. Now, those early days of PLW, Power League Wrestling, before you moved on to the NEWA, who was the ownership regime there at that time? Because Tommy Degnan, Tommy D, was primarily known as the owner of PLW for so long. But in those early days, was it him? Were there people helping him?
So when I got into PLW, it was Tom Deegan and Mark Amaral. They were the two
Yes.
head people. They were the two go tos. Mark would take care of the locker room. He would put together a lot of the back room, back office situations where Tom Deegan was more of the aesthetics of it. As far as I knew, he was always the ring guy, the operations guy, versus Mark. But they were definitely the two that, to me, I perceived as the two go-to guys, and that doesn't include like when we had practices on who would be trainer, or who would
Right.
be scripting storylines. Once again, I think a lot of that came down to the boys, but as far as running the office, they were the two key figures in my perspective.
Yeah. Now, a lot of the guys from NEWA would move on to UCW eventually for Unified Championship Wrestling, run by Anthony Rufo, of course. At that time, known to the fans as Mr. Troubleman. Why was it that the NEWA closed down, in your opinion, during that time and UCW was born? What was the reasoning for NEWA kind of going off to the sunset?
Oh boy, that's a loaded question. um, so I think it became where there was a lot of other minor promotions popping up in neighboring states, and a lot of the guys were just looking for more work. Back then, NEWA ran probably one show a month, and we practiced two times a week. So that was a lot of practicing for one show. So a lot of guys started looking outside of the state, and started finding a lot of smaller promotions. And that's where a lot of the older mindset still stayed in sight, where NEWA, PLW, and Yankee Pro Wrestling, you couldn't work for one and or the other. It was, you had to work for one or the other. You couldn't work for both, or more than one. So we found the go
Yeah.
around by leaving the state and going to other promotions and working for promotions that didn't know us. So I think that was the start of the downfall when it came to NEWA. And then out of that came the mindset within the boys in NEWA was that, hey, if we're going to travel and we're going to get in trouble for going elsewhere, and we can open ourselves up and do things ourselves, why don't we do that? And I think that's where it all sparked from. And then as more and more boys started opening up their doors, we just felt comfortable with them because we knew them, so we wouldn't say no. It was another place to work.
Yeah. So Anthony obviously eventually starts his own promotion with UCW. What are some of your memories specific to UCW over the years, whether it be, Barton Street Community Center or any of those shows, UMass Dartmouth? I remember the university show. Um, they started roughly in around
So my
1998.
my I'll be honest with you, and like I told you earlier, I don't remember much of my actual wrestling career, in ring or storyline wise. A lot of other memories, but the one memory I do have of one of their shows was at a Barton Street show. And boy, I feel so bad mentioning this because it was so unintentional. But Antonio Thomas's partner, Gino, um, I'm sorry, Roselli. Yeah.
Oh, Romeo Roselli,
Yes.
he was Johnny Heartbreaker.
So I had met him, I guess, at a Barton Street show. Um, and I guess I was a partner, a tag team partner of his at one point, and I did not recall that in any way. That was at some point in my career where I just wasn't really focused in wrestling. So I don't equate it. And I remember one day I sat with him after he left WWE um, at a locker room, and I reintroduced myself to him, not realizing that at one point we were tag team partners, and he brought the story to me and was like, "I know you. Like, do you not remember?" And he even told me of the incident that we had storyline wise in the parking lot of the show. And I felt so bad. And because once he told me the story, I knew exactly who he was. But to not realize it sitting in front of him, and that always triggered my altitude character recollections. Just that one instance with
Right.
him. And like, I'm so apologetic to it because I did not mean it in any way to be malicious that I didn't recognize him. I just truly did not recognize him.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, his appearance definitely changed. He got a lot bigger, much bigger guy as he went into the WWE, of course. But yeah, those early days, Johnny Heartbreaker here in the New England scene, and of course went on to become one of the heartthrobs with Antonio Thomas. Another gentleman from the NEWA, Bronco Jesse James. Of course, the late Mark Basil. He also wrestled as Marcus O'Middleton. Any memories of Bronco Jesse
Oh God,
James?
yes. Mark was a great guy. Marco Middleton. Um, he was just pleasant to talk to. I very rarely spoke business with him or wrestling. Um, my conversations with him were always a personal level, to be honest with you. Is, how are you doing, how things going, how's everything, how's work. When it came to wrestling, it was more of a, hey, I want to run a store, or an idea by you, that I would say to him. He He wasn't one of my go-tos, but he was definitely one of my fallbacks. I always thought of him as somebody who would guide you properly, and you may do with what he fed you. He gave you some good ideas, some good direction. You made them fruitful. So my honest
Right.
opinion with him is that he's just a great guy all around. It didn't have to be through the business. I could have met him anywhere, and I think we would have hit it off the same way. He was just a genuine person.
Yeah. And another gentleman who wrestled for NEWA and UCW, Thrash. Any
Oh
memories of
yes,
Thrash?
yes. So my best memory of Thrash is not even wrestling related. So he can do an amazing rendition of Little Pigs. The song. I have it
Huh.
on video for my wedding. He was at my wedding and he performed the song in karaoke. And let me tell you, that guy can sing. Great
Wow.
guy. Great guy. I mean, like I said, I can't say anything bad about anyone that I went through in the business, because even the people that I had issues with, ultimately I resolved them and became very good friends with them. And issue wise, I can think of two that come to mind. But with Thrash, no, I mean, honestly, Thrash, great guy. Um, Again, when I talked to him about the business, he always told me, go with your gut, go with what feels comfortable, just be safe out there. I always was drawn to him because of his style of wrestling. I always liked his brashness in his wrestling. Like his move set was always abrupt. Like to me, it was always full of energy. It was always a delivery that at the last moment was a pow, an impact. So I really really liked the character work, and I think just by observing his style helped me develop something up here that said, okay, you're capable of this but you're not capable of this, so let's find a middle ground
Yeah.
and know how to push the envelope, because he was great at pushing the envelope.
Right. Two of the great heels of the NEWA, Studley Steve Stallion and gorgeous Gino Giovanni. Obviously, we touched on Gino a little bit. You teamed up with him for a little while there. What are some of your memories of those two
Oh,
individuals over
oh,
the
gee.
years?
So love and hate with both of them. Love and hate with both of them. I will tell you right now, Gino and I, when we first met, great friends. Um, we had a falling out at one point. I'm pretty sure, knowing my history, that back in the NEWA days, I was a hothead and I dated two of his valets. So that became an issue between me and him at one point. And we had a falling out, and I think we edged each other on for a good 2 years, um, which it blows up between me and Gino at a show, not planned, not scripted. Um, just an NEWA show. Me and Scott Z decide to go and purchase a ticket and sit front row, and I choose to start antagonizing Gino. And in all right, he had every single right to react to me in the way he did. Again, I was a hothead in a bad place, and um, that became a wedge between me and Gino for a good 2 years. Um, and then one day, out of nowhere, we ran into each other. Believe it or not, I think it was at one of my sister's parties. I mean, my sister's Claudia, Jose Garcia's wife. So one
Yeah.
day we're at one of her parties and we look at each other and we literally just kind of went, hmm, and that was the end of it. Like that was it. And then from that moment
Wow.
on, me and Gino got along like there was no tomorrow. Like I see, and all I want to do is hug him. every time I see him and he sees me, it's a smile from ear to ear. I love that guy. So obviously the story with him, the show bleeds into Studley Steve Stallion. So Stud, again, love and hate relationship. My very first interaction with Studley Steve Stallion was back in NEWA when we did the Cranston Stadium show. I don't know if you remember that show with the Warlord.
I remember watching it on public access cable, but I
So
wasn't there live.
that was my first interaction with Studley Steve Stallion. And honestly, my impression of him was, what an asshole. Like, all you want to do is be a fake RBD. Like, honestly, that was my impression of him. And he'll even tell you that at that time in his career, he was very obnoxious. And you know, I was not a fan of his. And he was rolling at the time with Dragonfly. Even though they were working each other, we know it's all a work, and but they're good friends. And that day, that locker room was such a different locker room because of them than any other time, that I just equated that mentality to them. Um, which then brings me a couple of years later when I had the situation with Gino at one of the shows. Um, Me and Scott Z get kicked out of the show, and on our way out, at the door of the locker room, Studley Steve Stallion is yelling at me through the curtain. So if anybody knows me, they know that I'm a scrapper. I don't really back down. I'm one of those people that it's like, you know, hey, I've got my ass whooped before. It could happen again. So I have always been that trash talking person. So here's Steve Stallion, about four times my size, yelling at me, and I'm just hammering him with insults. um, and as I'm getting escorted out of the building with Scott Z. And then a couple of years later, I get a phone call from him. Hey, I'm starting a new promotion. Want to come? And completely different person at that point. By the time that started, wow, like not even the same guy. And I can tell you right now, I love that guy. I mean, there's not a person in this business that I can say I hate, but there's a lot of people that I can say I love, and he's up there. He's definitely one of those people that helped me a lot in my career. My primal days definitely made me who I am and who I was as Kevin Charisma, by no shadow of a doubt.
And let's talk about that PCW, Primal Conflict Wrestling. I remember ring announcing. I became the ring announcer for a while there, and ring announcing the show for the AmeriCal Civic Center, Wakefield, Massachusetts. They would go to Club Stars in Johnston, Rhode Island. They'd often be at all different locations, but some intimate settings. It was almost like I guess, comparable to a Shotgun Saturday Night for WWF. Like some of the places they went, they were these small venues, but pretty packed with people, and just a cool atmosphere. Usually a bar involved or whatever. Um, but what are your memories of Primal Conflict Wrestling? What they brought to New England? Obviously at the time ECW was huge, so hardcore was what they were all about. What are your memories from
Oh,
working there?
chaos. Organized chaos, to be honest with you. I mean, those are my fondest days. You were there. The memories that I have that I'm the most fondest, I think you're in every single picture. Um, so um, again, I and I haven't seen this in years, but I'm pretty sure one of my promos with you for Primal Conflict, I just took the mic off of your hands and kind of went on a tirade on how I run your show. um, so
Right.
organized chaos. We had a road and a point A and point B. Did we stay on that road? Hell no. Hell no. Um, I have so many fond memories of Primal Conflict from the locker room. Believe it or not, to the matches in that aspect, to the craziness of the Wonderland, the dog track. Um, those are days that for me are infamous. It's like a kid getting caught with their hand in a candy jar and then running away like they did nothing wrong. That was primal for me.
Right.
I got to explore a lot of what I wouldn't do personally because Stud turned around and said to most of the boys, and I would not expect this from him to me because of our history, but he said all gloves are off. Do what you want, do your character the way you want. And I think that's where I took Kevin Charisma and said, this is going to be a guy that's going to be hated because he's going to be misunderstood. And he's going to be misunderstood because of a personal level. People are just not going to like the guy that is Kevin Charisma. Like, regardless of his character, his ability, his work, Mike skill, no matter what, it was the persona, the person they were just not going to like. Um, so when Stud said, you got free reign, that's where that came in. Because I said to him, I go, hey, we don't have that many titles, and I can get one in a heartbeat. Um, I got an idea. I don't like my character. I don't think I can make it go over as a baby. It's not in me. The word charisma is way too much of a word to fulfill. Hence the reason why the spelling got changed. Um, but then
Right.
when he said that, I embraced it. I was like, yeah, I want to be hated. I want people to not like me in the ring and out of the ring. And that's what I brought to the table with that character. And it was thanks to Steve saying, do your thing, do what you want to do, explore what you want to do, land where you want to land, and then take off with it. And
Yeah. believe
believe it or not, that's where I even went out of the box and got a little bit into hardcore, which I don't do.
Right. Exactly. And you touched on Jose Garcia, being related to him. A lot of fans probably don't even realize that, but you're the brother-in-law of the East Coast Intensity, Jose Perez. Of course, he wrestled, like you said, as El Diablo for a long period of time prior to being Jose Perez. He was the Commando for a short period of time as well. What are your memories of working with Jose? The wrestling side
So
of
he's one I'll
Jose
tell you I
Perez.
hate. No, I'm joking. No. I love that guy. Honestly, not just in the fact that he's my brother-in-law. Obviously we have a lot that has nothing to do with the business. Um, you know, um, I do anything for family. So like he's family. If you ask and you call and you tell me and I'm aware, I'll do. He helped me instrumentally in getting into the business. If it wasn't for him getting in the business, there'd be no Kevin Charisma. There'd be no me in wrestling. So that alone speaks volumes of him. And being prior to the business, let's be honest, I was little brother. Who wants to hang out with their little brother?
Right.
Um, so for him to be so welcoming to letting me get into wrestling, which is a passion of his, because he did it in high school. He found someone that got him into pro wrestling. And within less than a year of him becoming a wrestler, I became a wrestler, following his footsteps. He could have been that older brother that just said, no, I don't want you here. And he wasn't. He was the first one to turn around and get in that ring and say, oh, you can try that with me. and he would protect me. I mean, most of my sickest moves, bumps are only done with a few select group of people that I trust. And it's because I learned them through them and with them. And Jose is probably the one that has given me the biggest repertoire of move set ever. And if it wasn't for him getting in the ring and taking every single bump of every single move, I wouldn't have done it because I wouldn't have trusted anyone else that way. And I don't think anyone else would have trusted me, as green as I was, to even attempt it. The only other crazy person that I would think would
Right.
do it would be Vertebraker.
Yes. Vertebreaker, another interview we just conducted. Just had him on a couple days ago, so this was his first interview as well. So it'd be good to get his story out there. And let's talk about referees a little bit. Obviously over the years, different promotions, different referees. You mentioned Sean Markey earlier. Bob Costa, he was one of the senior officials for the NEWA. Ish Perez, of course. And you move on to other promotions like UCW. You had the big man himself, referee Peter B. You had Zach Carter, Zach the ref. You know, yeah, a whole host of referees over the years. Sal Gilberto, Mickey Lee, you know, Worcester's own Dave Torres. Is there any referee that stands out? Who was your favorite referee to work with if you had to pick
Honestly, I
one
think it
over the
was
years?
Sean Markey. Um, Obviously,
Ah,
because
yes.
early in my career, and me and Sean had a friendship. Um, so I remember being in the ring, and I've always been very vocal in the ring. I've never had a problem speaking in the ring, whether it was to the crowd or through my match, or even guiding, any type of part of the match, whether it was with me, my opponent, or the referee. Um, you know, I've always been very vocal. And the thing with Sean was that I would always rib him on the go home. With me, I always told them when he asked me, well, what's the go home? What's the ending? I'm like, I'll let you know. When I tell you count to three, you just count to three. Don't worry about it. We got it. And he will tell you my matches with Vertebreaker that he ref, he would hate, because neither of us would tell him what the ending was, and we would go and wait for that 2 minute mark, get that 2 minute mark, go into the ending, closing sequence, get our shoulders to the mat, and be like, three count, and that was it. That was it. So with
Yeah.
Sean, him being so forthcoming with his time and not pushing us to that referee standard. Because I'll tell you right now, a lot of the matches with me, Jose, me and Vertebreaker, me and TJ just went off the rails. We just had so much fun that if we planned a match, we try to stick to it. But if for any reason something kind of went sideways, it would just become a free for all, and we would just work it out and call it right in there. So a lot of the time, Sean in the NEWA days was the person that ended up with those matches, and I remember seeing his eyes kind of bug out.
Yeah. And let's go to, of course, the HWF, the promotion that I would run. I would do spot shows here and there. The Hardcore Wrestling Federation eventually transitioned into the Heatwave Wrestling Federation. You would often lock it up with TJ Richter, and you guys would just have some killer matches. What are your memories working
Me and
with TJ
TJ
over the
became
years?
friends very, very early in wrestling. We were married in PLW within my first year. When I was in PLW, when I started wrestling, it wasn't under the mortician character. That was still a manager role. So I went by Mr. Grand Slam, which was a baseball gimmick with a green half mask. Which ironically, the
Oh,
half
wow.
mask was a dyed um, muscle shirt that I cut up and just tied in a knot in the back of my head. And me and Jose dyed it green. That was the mask. And at the time, TJ was going by Kane. Kane with a C, not with a K.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and we got married. Me and him would work almost every PLW show at Park Avenue that there was, and that was such a stiff ring. And me and TJ did not care. And the thing with me and TJ is that we had the friendship and the love for each other, that if he put his body on the line for me, I would do the same for him. So those matches were like, as hard as that ring was, and as brutal as it was to be in that building, which was so small, and so hot at times. Me and him would just go balls to the walls. It was like, whether it was for 10 people or the 50 people that fit in that place, or just the 5 people that came with the rest of the guys to see the show. Me and TJ never held back because we always wanted better for each other. If I can do something that would make him look better, I do it, and he'd do the same thing for me.
Any advice you have for somebody who is looking to get into the
Oh yeah, oh
business?
yeah. So number one, be humble. Okay, number one, be humble. Don't think that because you're in that locker room that you're the next star. Okay, think of it as to, if you're in that locker room, you're the next sponge. You need to absorb everything, weed out the good and the bad, be professional, and learn the craft. Learn the craft to the point that you can not only perform, but put together the aspect that you want to tell, the story that you want to deliver, and understand the reaction that you're going to get back. And if that reaction is the reaction you want, if you can take those 5 core things, I think you have the recipe for success in wrestling. Now, I'm not going to say that I was successful in wrestling, because, again, to me, that wasn't my aspiration. I did it for fun. But that's what I got out of it. That what everyone was trying to teach me, those were the 5 core fundamentals. In psychology being at the very top. If you cannot tell a story if you don't know psychology, and psychology is not just putting a match together; it's knowing why a move is where it needs to be, why you're doing this today and not tomorrow, why you're trying to tell the story in the way that you're trying to say it, and is it conveyable to the public. And I know that's a lot, but you have to realize that you're playing a character that's saying a story, and nothing is personal.
Right. Yankee Pro Wrestling, another promotion that you were a part of. You touched on that a little bit. Your memories of working for Joe Eugenio.
Great memories. Great memories. I didn't interact much with Joe other than the days of the show, payday or the paydays, and then other than that, the initial sit down with him back at the training facility on the second floor, back office with Scott Ashworth. Um, yeah, a great
Yes. Yep.
guy, great guy. I'll be honest with you, he's the one that saw me in NEWA and approached me and asked me to come over to Yankee. So if it wasn't for Scott, I would have never walked into the doors of Yankee Pro Wrestling. Um, so, I
I know that.
remember walking in to meet Scott, and there was Joe. I got the invite from Scott. I went up with Jose because Jose was already working there. I remember walking into the back office, and there's Joe behind the desk with Scott off, to his left hand side. Newspapers and billboards all around the office, file cabinets, a dark wood desk with, I believe, a crimson red rug. Out of all things, a crimson red rug in a wrestling office. um,
Wow.
and it was just a talk. And then I was told, hey, we want to bring you in, but we don't want you to do the gimmick that you're currently doing. We want to put you under a mask. Believe it or not, Joe actually gave me the mask. He brought the mask right out and go, this is the mask we want you to use. and I built the rest of the gear around it, and that's when I became the Red Dragon for Yankee Pro Wrestling, and I was tasked to tag with referee, um, and develop a little bit of his character. So he ultimately became someone that branched out on his own. He had a moniker very similar to mine, so, mask similar to mine. He became the Black Dragon. And if you don't know, Davy Cash. So
Yeah.
I got tasked with that by Joe. And I remember my PLA days tagging with Davey, and just trying to develop a couple of his insecurities, I would guess, or at least his feeling for the ring as a performer versus a referee. And you know, he kind of took off from there. So I would be remiss to say that I didn't learn some from him as well. Davey definitely brought his own spin, and I was so young that being tasked to partner with somebody brand new into the ring was very, very eye opening for me. And I don't know if that was something that was by design, but it was a nice opportunity.
Yeah. How about some of the tag teams in pro wrestling? Any memories of working with any of the teams? You had the Dogs of War, of course, Matt and Kyle, the Storm Brothers. You had Sick and Twisted with Faith in their corner. That would be Prince Ivan Zangveen and Matt Storm. Of course, you had the Damned, which was Draven and Mad Dog Matt Storm. There was the Elements of Suicide, Cinna and Onyx. You also had Cold Front. I don't know if you remember the tag team of Cold Front, but many teams in the New England scene over the years.
Oh,
Any
lots
memories
lots
with
of
any of them?
memories from pretty much all of them. I'll be honest with you. By person, I know them. If you want specifics for each team, you're gonna have to tell me the team of the name and the partners, so I can tell you the story. Because they all
Yeah.
blend in together. To me, they were all friends. There was no partnership, no. They were all interchangeable as far as tag team partners because I enjoy working with every single one of them. And through most of my career, most of it is just stories because I was doing it for fun. So throw a team out and I'll tell you a story.
Yeah. Well, I guess maybe Sick and Twisted, Prince Ivan and Matt Storm.
All right, so lots of history with Matt. Prince Ivan, um, name. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Prince Ivan Zangveen. I want to say his real name was Eric, but I don't remember his
uh,
name honestly.
so
Big tall guy. He kind of had a
yes, yeah, okay,
Gangrel
yes,
Brood type of
yes.
gimmick.
So um, I worked them. I believe it was a Jose show. Um, So one thing about Matt, working Matt, Matt always looked like he works stiff, and he does not. Matt always took care of me in the ring. Matt and I always had a liking for each other. Me and Matt always, always, always got along. Always joking. He's just been a very nice guy my whole entire life. Even when they did Mayhem, and I came in as one of their trainers, there was a lot of discussion with them. But working against Matt, it was always fun in the ring. Even back when he was Kid Liberty, there was just a lot of fun stuff. I love Matt tremendously. Lots of great ideas. A lot of great restructuring. I'll be honest with you. Like I would set up a match, come up with some ideas, and Matt would be one of the first to turn around and say, that would go good. That's a good move set put together. Hey, try this or add this onto it. So Matt was always the type of person that, to me, gave me some valuable insight to my matches, and he always offered it based on what he saw me and my opponent practicing in the locker room. It was never a intrusion. It was more like we were going through something, and he would be like, "Hey guys, I think this will look good here," and we would add it in. And I think I learned how to put my matches together a lot through that. A lot of people just saying to me, "Hey, well, you're capable of doing this, so why don't you throw this move in there?" Because I was never great at putting a match together. I was always the type that it was like, "Hey, you want to do that? Let's go for it." So me putting together a
Right.
match was kind of, roll with the punches.
Yeah. Any memories of Mr. Biggs, the late
Oh
Mr. Biggs,
yeah.
and his wife
Oh god,
Chris?
yeah. Mr. Biggs, um, great person. Lots of insight as far as personal growth. I was a hothead. He was always the type that would calm me down in the locker room. I had a very, very short fuse for some reason in the locker room. If something went wrong in a match, I would take it out on myself in the locker room. If I left something out of a match and we didn't get to it, I would just beat myself up in the locker room. A lot of times, because of my temper, I would just really be, I don't want to say destructive, but I was very abrasive. And he was always the type that was like, "Hey, dude, you're doing this for fun. Just don't worry about it. You'll get it next time. It's a learning curve. It's is it something you normally do?" Like, he always put it in perspective. He was always the type that said to me, "Hey, was that something that you always do, or something that you're adding on?" And the one thing I can always remember about Mr. Biggs was the fact that he would say to me, "Hey, if you just added it on, man, it's going to take time for you to put it into your repertoire. Just work at it." And that was a cool thing to hear, and he had a completely different wrestling style. So for him to be able to help
Yeah.
me was definitely something different.
And Mr. Biggs, he ran the IWA, and eventually he also ran the WCWA. He was one of the promoters involved with the IIW, International Independent Wrestling. Any memories from those three promotions at all, or working for Mr. Biggs from a
So from
promoter
a promoter
standpoint?
standpoint, yeah, the few matches I did for him, he was very nice to me and gracious. I never ever felt that the direction that I was given was a direction that would contradict either my character or my integrity, or the legacy I was trying to build. He always was very, very, very pleasant to me. I don't think that in any match that I had for him that I was ever told, "This is what I need from you." I think the thing I recall from him the most was him saying to me, "Hey, you got 5-10 minutes. Go have fun." And that's what I did. That's
Yeah,
exactly what I did for him.
yeah.
If he gave me a direction, I would try to stick to it. But 95% of the time, it was always have fun out there.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about Mount Rushmore. There's different ways of looking at Mount Rushmore, obviously. There could be personal favorites, there could be most successful or the biggest stars in wrestling. So you can look at it any way you'd like. But who would you say is your personal Mount Rushmore for pro wrestling as a whole? Doesn't have to be, we'll do a
Mhm.
separate one for New England. So maybe
Oh,
just the big times,
so so
WWE,
so
WCW.
the big time for me, oh geez, I mean, I'd have to turn around and say obviously Ric Flair's in there. Bret Hart for me was very instrumental, and obviously Shawn Michaels. So there's three right there. Um, and I think
Yep.
I mentioned him earlier, but Don Morocco, I don't know why he just sticks with me. I was never able to be that power guy. I never did body slams. If you look at my history, I don't think I've ever body slammed anybody. At very best, I think I've suplexed or sidewalk slammed somebody with momentum. um,
Right.
so why Don Morocco stands out it's odd to me, but I think it's very definitive because of the fact that he told the story. I think he was the first person that, to me, when he walked in the ring, he was the person that was like, here's the beginning of the story. Follow me, and I'm going to get you to the end, and you're going to understand it, no matter what match he had. So to me,
Yeah.
and I don't hear many people think of Don Morocco as that type of person to be on Mount Rushmore. But to me, he is. To me, I think those are my four, because they each one of them taught me something different.
And how about from a New England aspect? Who do you think of the four top to come out of the New England scene any
So
era?
to me, my the aspect of top is different because I don't think being in the top is determined by making it anywhere. Whether it was TNA, ECW, WWE, any of them. To me, that aspect of New England wrestling falls on a whole different level because it's not just about the ring and the performance. It's about the connections that I've made, the friends that I've made, um, the people that I trust to this day. So to me, people that would be right up there would be someone like Anthony Rufo. He's definitely part of that. Rocco D'Alessandro is instrumental for me. Tom Deegan for giving me the chance in PLW. So, that's three right there out of four that I would 100% say to you that will always remain on that Mount Rushmore. The fourth person I would say would be interchangeable because it would be all of my trainers that gave me the ability to adapt and have so many characters and have fun with it. So that fourth position could go to Jose, Silvano Souza, Steve Bradley, Bronco, Anthony Rufo, Gino Martino. Any one of them could fall into it because they were just that much of an impact on a young 19-year-old.
Yeah. I'm going to throw two more names at you if you have any memories of either of them. Bad Boy Billy Black and Old School Derek
Boy, do I
Destiny.
have memories of both of them. Oh man! So, starting with Bad Boy. Bad Boy, great guy. Lots of stories, all party stories. In the ring, I can't say I have any stories of him in the ring because every time we shared the ring, it was just fun. Like whether it led to something, whether there was a story to be told, whether it was a squash match and just needed to put him over. Um, it was always fun, and he was always willing to help develop. Every time I was in the ring with him, even on a squash match, it was never you're not going to get anything in. There was always something. He always wanted you to shine. He always gave me the opportunity to shine. So Bad Boy holds a special place in my heart. With the fact that he had a feud with Gino, and I needed to hate him. To the fact that he helped shape me as a wrestler. There was a lot of bumps that he took for moves that I wanted to learn that I was just getting from AAA, watching AAA videos. And he was in the facilities, and he was like, "Go ahead, let's do it." So if it wasn't for him taking the bumps that he took for me, um, to help me get the mechanics down, you know, I wouldn't be able to sit here and say that I had a successful career. And I know that my career, successful wise, is much different than a lot of people's success. But in my eyes, I was very successful. I had fun, and that's what I went in for.
Yeah. Now, fast forward many years from now, what would you say is your legacy? How do you want to
So
be remembered?
in New England wrestling, I don't want to be remembered as a wrestler. I don't want to be remembered as just another passing person. I've had the privilege of being in the ring with a lot of great people. Um, I've had the privilege of being in the ring early with greatness to come. Um, I just want to be remembered for being there. You know, I just want to be that guy that says, I was in that locker room. I can be part of that story, and that I contributed positively to someone. You know, if I gave you some advice, um, I hope it was constructive. I hope it was in the right direction because that's how it was intended. And I don't want to be that guy that people say, "Oh, I was in the ring with him." I want to be that guy that is said, "Oh, I learned this from him."
Makes sense. So, in closing, um, New England Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame. You were inducted several years ago. Just take us back to that night. Any memories you have of that evening, and getting to kind of see all of the boys again, maybe some that you haven't seen in a
So
long time.
that was an awesome night, and I'm glad you segue into that, because I actually have a question for you. Um, so I hold you dearly in my heart. I think greatly of you. You are by far one of the most outstanding people in New England wrestling. From day one.
Thank you.
So my question to you is something that I've been trying to figure out my whole entire career as Kevin Charisma. So that name was put together in a group of, or not the name, but the whereabouts of it came up, kind of through me and Vertebraker. But through our conversations, I have been told, as a conversation point between him and I, that you actually came up with the Kevin Charisma character, and that at one point you had somewhat of a character script for it. And
Oh,
do you do you recall that, or
oh, go
am
ahead.
I because I know at this point in my career I was bouncing everywhere, and that was the gimmick I wanted to land on, and I did not have anything. And you had presented this character to someone, and I believe it was Bert, if I'm not mistaken, and it landed on my lap.
So I remember specifically having some input about the gimmick, a new gimmick for you. I remember talking with you at that time. You were kind of looking to mix it up and go with something else. I didn't have a script though. That wasn't me. If somebody did do that, that wasn't me. And I didn't coin the phrase Kevin Charisma. I didn't come up with the name or anything. But as far as like, what the gimmick would kind of be about or be like, I remember having input specifically, but that's kind of where it ended there. I didn't have a script or
And
anything.
that's, I think, to me what really stands out, because that character to me has a hint of you. And you at the time, were a friend of mine, and the only time that I had taken, some kind of hint for a character has always been through a trainer or a promoter. So that particular character of Kevin Charisma has a lot to do with your input. So being inducted, into the Hall of Fame was huge for me, because again, I did it for fun. I was not looking for any kind of recognition, notoriety, or acceptance. I was just out to have fun. And it started out by seeing technically my older brother doing something fun, and I just wanted to join in. Um, so to develop the Kevin Charisma character and ultimately being inducted into the Hall of Fame, and befittingly being inducted by you, um, was full
Right.
circle moment for me, because that, I retired, a year earlier, and I am one of those
Yeah.
that if I do a show, it's very sporadic and it has to have meaning behind it. Um, I'm retired. I don't do shows. If I do a show here or there, which I believe I've done maybe two since I've retired, has been for a reason. I am more than content being retired. I am happy where I ended it, and I attribute that a lot to the success you had with your promotion, your Hall of Fame, the ideas that you gave me, and the way that you helped me out and were an integral friend of mine, not business wise, not wrestling wise, but a true friend. I think a lot of the input that you gave me
Yeah.
was truly seeing me and having said something to me that you know I can develop. And you have a great mind, so I mean, why wouldn't I?
No, I appreciate that, and it was an honor that you asked me to induct you. You know, it was a great night, and you can't have a Hall of Fame, in my opinion, in New England without having you in it because you were a big part of the New England scene for so long. And you weren't just, you weren't just somebody that was there for a while. You were somebody who actually, made an impact. You were somebody who constantly had, great matches. And you worked with so many different styles. And, and you always pulled it together. And then, like I said, you've had some really good matches over the years with all different types of talent. So, um, yeah, I mean, looking back at those days as a ring announcer, you walk in the locker room and you see Kevin Charisma in the locker room, it's going to be a good night. You're just one of those guys that it changes the way you look at a show. It changes the way you feel. You feel like, all right, there's just an extra level of comfort when you were part of the event. So
Oh, Joe,
I thank you for
you're
that.
making me tear up because honestly, that means a lot to me. That means so much to me, especially coming from you. You know that I think of you very highly. You are by far one of the people that in this business I can trust. And in the time that I came in, there wasn't many of those. Everybody was out for themselves. I never came into it to make a mark in any way. And to hear that coming from you, especially you, definitely holds weight. Because I never intended to make that mark. And for you being you and knowing the business the way you do, that's big. So it touches me, believe you me. And I never thought of myself as being that type of performer. I was filling in a show. Um, my claim to fame will never be a main event. My claim to fame will always be the curtain jerker. And to make myself feel better, what I always told myself was that the first match, the curtain jerker, always sets the pace for the show. So my job was just to make sure that I didn't screw up because most of the time I was the curtain jerker, and if I'm going to set the pace to the show, I can't let the boys down and have a shitty match. And believe you me, my matches were never as good as every other match that was in the building. I never felt that way. So to hear that coming from you, that in your eyes I had some good matches, it definitely makes me feel good. I think I was lucky enough to have some really good matches with certain people that I just trust. Um, I don't think I ever made that kind of an impact on one person or anyone that would warrant that. So I truly am grateful for those words. I truly am. To hear that coming from you is definitely something that holds valuable weight. Because it wasn't my intention, and it, hopefully that to me qualifies as one of those fulfillments of what I wanted a legacy to be. Because again, I walked into it without having any expectations, and I didn't want to be a failure at it. I'm very competitive, so you know, having to be successful was definitely part of it. Um, I didn't want to be one of those guys that just came and went. Like you mentioned a couple minutes ago, a lot of people do this and they do it for a very short time period. For a person that did it for fun, I did it for a very long time, and I had fun the whole entire time. good, bad, ugly, you know, horrible work conditions, some really poor promoters, getting stiffed on paydays, and having just enough money to get a hamburger at McDonald's and make it home was a constant. Um, but I did it for fun. I did it to be with the guys, to be with my friends, to just be able to say, as I get older, that when I have grandkids, I can say to them, "Hey, look at what your granddad did at one point." That was my goal, not to be an inspiration to others, or even be held in that regard. So for you to say that, it really means a lot to me. Truly does.
Yeah, no, without a doubt, and it's absolutely true. So just know that you are heavily respected and one of the greats to do it
Thank
here in
you.
the New
Thank you
England
so
scene.
very much. And so are you. So are you.
I appreciate it. So, Hugo, thank you so much for joining us here, the All Access Entertainment Podcast. For Kevin Karizma, I'm Joseph Bruen. This has been the All Access Entertainment Podcast. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and we'll see you guys next time.